June 30th, 1998. 12-year-olds Emily and Elizabeth Clark left home at 7 o'clock in the morning to go to the lake near the town of Pine Hollow. They did not return home. The twins' bright red bicycles were found abandoned on the shore of Lost Lake, a lake shrouded in local legends about missing children. Their backpacks lay untouched. Inside were the breakfasts their mother Linda had prepared that morning, and a camera with unfinished film. Pine Hollow is a tiny town in southern Arkansas, wedged between the dense forests of the Ozark Mountains and the shadows of even older legends. Population 864. One main street, one school, 3 churches, a place where everyone knows each other by name, where they don't lock their doors at night. At least that's how it was before the twins disappeared. "They never went in the water without me," a shaken Linda Clark repeated in an interview with a local TV station. Her eyes were dry, but her voice trembled like an autumn leaf in the wind. Emily could swim better, but even she always followed the rules. Something happened on the shore. Something or someone took my girls. Search teams combed 80 square miles of forest. Divers surveyed every foot of the lake. No sign of them. Lost Lake, clear on ordinary days, had become murky from constant diving and searching. Its dark surface reflected the cloudless sky with a kind of sinister serenity, as if the lake mocked human endeavor. Sheriff Robert McKenzie, then just taking office, organized the largest search operation in the county's history. The 35-year-old widower, who had returned to his hometown after serving on the Little Rock police force, saw the twins' disappearance as not only a professional challenge, but also a personal tragedy. That summer was arid, he recalls, looking at faded photographs of the missing girls in his office. A dusty sunbeam falls on his tired face, emphasizing wrinkles that weren't there 8 years ago. The ground was so hard that there should have been footprints left behind if someone had taken them away. But the only prints led to the water and broke off. It was as if the girls had simply vanished into thin air or gone into the lake and never came back. The location of the disappearance was strange in itself. Lost Lake was a small, crescent-shaped lake surrounded by centuries-old trees that leaned toward the water, as if whispering their secrets to it. Locals rarely came here alone, preferring the more open and crowded beaches on the opposite shore. The north side, where the twins' bikes were found, was quiet, overgrown, with steep slopes to the water. Not the most comfortable place to swim, especially for children. "It's odd that they chose this particular part of the lake," said Jane Harris, the last person to see the twins alive. The elderly woman was picking berries near the trail when she spotted the girls on bicycles. Usually kids prefer the South Beach. There's sand and a gentle slope. But the North Shore, it's dark, even on a sunny day, because of the trees. The water is always colder there, and deeper. Paranoia gripped the town. Parents stopped letting their children outside. Churches held round-the-clock services, and parishioners prayed on their knees for hours. The local supermarket sold out of its stock of locks and chains in 3 days. Unfamiliar cars were seen off with suspicious looks, and some locals began carrying guns openly, defiantly demonstrating a willingness to protect their children at all costs. At Johnny's Bar, Pine Hollow's only drinking establishment, conversations grew quieter but scarier with each mug of beer. Locals whispered about an old legend: the children the forest took. According to the legend, every 25 years, 2 children were taken by the forest. No one could name the source of the story, but many claimed to have heard it from their grandparents. My grandmother used to tell me that in 1973, a brother and sister Thompson went missing, said Bill Wright, owner of a local sawmill. And before that, in 1948, the Carter twins. They were never found either. The official investigation focused on more mundane theories: kidnapping, accident, possible flight. Mackenzie interviewed every family in Pine Hollow and within a 30-mile radius, checked everyone with a criminal record. I searched every abandoned structure, every barn, every basement, to no avail. The Clark twins weren't the kind of kids who ran away from home. Straight A's in school, active in their church community, close relationship with their parents. Emily was into photography and dreamed of becoming a journalist. Elizabeth loved to read and draw, often depicting fantastic creatures and landscapes. Both girls were loved and happy, as far as anyone who knew them could tell. After a month, the search was officially called off. 6 months later, the case went unsolved. Life in Pine Hollow slowly returned to normal. Children played in the streets again. Doors were no longer locked with multiple locks. The twins were talked about less and less. Their names were spoken more quietly, as if their story was becoming a new urban legend that was better not to be remembered too often. Only in the Clark house did time seem to stand still, the girls' room untouched, like a shrine to unfulfilled hopes. The beds were neatly made, unfinished homework on the desks. On the shelves were Emily's photo collection and Elizabeth's sketchbooks. Linda went in there every night, sat between the beds, and told her daughters how her day was going, as if they could hear her. David Clark, the twins' father, couldn't stand the suspense. 3 months after his daughters disappeared, he hanged himself in his garage. His suicide note contained only one sentence: "I have to find them." Sheriff Mackenzie didn't give up. Every Monday, he spent an hour reviewing the case files. Every anniversary of the disappearance, he took the same route as the twins, stopping at the lakeside and gazing into the dark water, as if waiting for it to finally reveal its secret. Every Christmas, he left 2 presents on the porch of the Clark house. So it went on for 8 long years, until a chance find in the cave rekindled hope and fear, stirred the swamp of oblivion that Pine Hollow had begun to cover itself with, and forced the town to face its demons again. Demons that were perhaps far older and more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. June 30th of 1998 began as a normal summer day. The temperature was expected to rise to 95 degrees by noon. Linda Clark was preparing breakfast for her daughters when they came down to the kitchen, already dressed for their trip to the lake. Their voices echoed through the house, the last carefree sounds she would ever hear from her children. The kitchen in the Clark home was small but cozy. Yellow curtains let in the morning light, creating a warm atmosphere. On the refrigerator were dozens of photos secured with magnets. Twins at a Christmas matinee. Twins at a school talent contest. Twins with their father on a fishing trip. A chronicle of a happy life that would be cut short in a few hours. "I made them turkey sandwiches and apples," she recalls, her fingers moving over them machine-like, as if she were still slicing bread for children who are no longer there. Linda's gaze stares into the void, her voice monotonous, lifeless. Emily wanted to get a camera. She was into photography. I helped them pack their backpacks, kissed them one last time at 7:05. The morning was clear, cloudless. The sun was already starting to bake, promising one of those sweltering Arkansas days when the air gets thick and heavy. David Clark, the twins' father, left for work at 6:30. He was a mechanic at an auto repair shop in a neighboring town. He didn't realize he would never see his daughters again. Witnesses saw the twins on red bicycles heading down a forest road toward Lost Lake. Their bikes were a 12th birthday present, brightly colored with shiny spokes and white baskets on the front. They rode down Pine Street, then turned onto a dirt road that led through the woods to the lake. The road was narrow, with deep ruts from the rains, framed by tall pine trees that created penumbra shade even on a clear day. Jane Harris, an elderly woman picking berries near the trailhead, was the last person to see them alive. She was 78 years old, but the memory of that morning remained crystal clear, as if seared into her consciousness. "They passed me around 7:30, she says, sitting on the porch of her house. The creaky rocking chair counts down the seconds like a metronome. Elizabeth waved at me. Emily said something to her sister, and they both laughed. The usual happy laughter of children anticipating a day by the water. I remember thinking at the time how they looked like angels with their golden hair shining in the sunlight. Lost Lake was located 2.5 miles from downtown. It took 20 minutes to get there by bicycle. The twins were estimated to arrive at the lake at about 7:50. The lake was crescent-shaped, with steep banks on the north side and a gentle beach on the south side. The water was dark, opaque because of the peaty bottom. The depth in the center reached 40 feet. When the twins didn't return for lunch, Linda began to worry. Anxiety grew by the minute, turning into a chilling dread. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she called the sheriff. Linda's voice shook as she explained that her daughters were never late, that they always returned on time, that something had definitely happened. By 4, a search party was organized. 20 people, mostly neighbors and family friends, set out for the lake. Sheriff Mackenzie coordinated the operation, dividing the volunteers into 5 groups, each exploring a different sector. The air was filled with cries of, "Emily! Elizabeth!" reverberating off the trees and creating an eerie echo. By 7 p.m., they found 2 bright red bicycles neatly leaning against an old oak tree on the shore of Lost Lake. An ancient oak with a twisted trunk and heavy branches overhanging the water like the arms of a giant. The place was quiet, secluded, hidden from the main path by dense undergrowth. Not the kind of place the kids usually came to. 2 backpacks lay next to the bikes. Inside, an untouched lunch, sandwiches, apples, water bottles, and Emily's camera, an old Polaroid she'd gotten from her grandfather. The film was half used. "That moment when I saw the bikes was the scariest moment of my career," Mackenzie says, his usually firm voice trailing off. "They were so neat, like the kids had just left them and gone somewhere. But where? And why didn't they take their stuff?" The photos that transpired showed the usual shots of the lake, the trees, the flowers. Emily loved photographing nature, especially the small details, a dewdrop on a leaf, the pattern of bark, the reflection of clouds in water. The last shot was blurry, as if the photographer had turned sharply, trying to capture something unexpected. A blurred silhouette among the trees, impossible to identify. A person, an animal, a play of light and shadow. By the next morning, the search had widened. State police arrived. A helicopter circled over the forest, its roar breaking the age-old silence of the Ozark Mountains. Canines brought dogs that sniffed the backpacks and bicycles, trying to pick up the trail. The dogs led them to the water's edge and stopped, whining and refusing to go any further. The search was the largest in the county's history, Mackenzie says. The dark circles under his eyes attest to the sleepless nights that have gone on for 8 years. Over 200 volunteers, canines with dogs, helicopters. We've combed 80 square miles of forest. Divers have explored every inch of the lake. Nothing, no bodies, no clothes, not even signs of a struggle. The forest around Lost Lake was dense, rugged. Pines and oaks created a dense canopy through which light could hardly penetrate. The undergrowth consisted of thorny shrubs and poison ivy, not the kind of place where children could get lost and go unnoticed while searching. And yet the twins seemed to vanish into thin air. The official version, accepted after a month of fruitless searching, spoke of a possible kidnapping. But no one had seen any suspicious cars or strangers in the neighborhood. Police checkpoints on all roads leading out of the city recorded nothing unusual on the day of the disappearance. No ransom demands have been made, no leads, except for a blurry photograph that experts have never been able to decipher. Life in Pine Hollow was split between before and after. Parents stopped letting their children walk unsupervised. Previously open and friendly residents became suspicious. Locals began locking their doors at night, a habit previously unknown in this tight-knit community where everyone had known each other since childhood. They started talking about a curse in the church, recalls Reverend Simons, rector of the local church. A hunched, gray-haired man whose eyes had seen too much grief for one lifetime. People remembered the old legend of the children taken by the forest. I tried to guide them to faith, to hope, but the fear ran deep. Some families even moved away after the case. The case gradually cooled down. Media interest waned after the first few weeks. The state police reduced the number of officers assigned to the search. The timeline stopped for the Clark family, but kept moving for the others. Sheriff Mackenzie continued to investigate in his spare time, poring over evidence, interviewing witnesses anew, looking for what might have been missed. But each time came to the same dead end. David Clark couldn't bear the strain of the unknown. 3 months after his daughters disappeared, he was found hanged in his garage. Linda was left alone in a house full of ghosts and memories. She kept the girls' room intact. 2 beds tucked in with colorful bedspreads, plush toys on pillows, posters on the walls. Pine Hollow had learned to live with an unhealed wound. People went back to their normal routines. Life went on, but fear lurked beneath the surface of normalcy. No one went to Lost Lake alone anymore. No one let children play in the woods unsupervised. The town became a place where doors were locked, not only from strangers, but from something indefinable lurking in the shadows of the trees. Don't forget to like and leave a comment under this video. It will help YouTube's algorithms promote our investigation, and more people will be able to see it. Stories like this shouldn't be left in the shadows, and only together can we shed light on the mystery of the Clark sisters' disappearance. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next part of this mysterious story. It was the 23rd day of May in the year 2006. Jason Hawkins, a 32-year-old science teacher and amateur speleologist, has explored one of the little-studied caves 15 miles north of Pine Hollow. His discovery will turn the investigation into the Clark sisters' disappearance upside down and force the town's residents to remember the darkness they have tried so hard to forget. The Ozark Mountains are riddled with a network of caves, hundreds of documented and perhaps thousands of undiscovered underground cavities. Erosion of limestone over millions of years has created labyrinths that go deep into the bowels of the earth. The cave Hawkins explored had no official name and was absent from most maps. A narrow entrance, almost invisible among boulders and brush, led into a system of low tunnels where you had to crawl. It was a narrow passage where light barely penetrated, Hawkins recalls, nervously adjusting his thin-rimmed glasses. His hands shake as he shows photographs of the cave. I noticed a glow, like something metallic was reflecting the beam of my flashlight. At first I thought it was crystals in the rock, but when I got closer, I realized it was something artificial. The temperature in the cave was 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and the air was damp and musty. A thin layer of condensation covered the walls, making the surface slippery to the touch. The sounds of dripping water echoed through the tunnels, making it seem as if the cave were breathing. Squeezing deeper through a passage no more than 2 feet wide, Hawkins found himself in a small chamber about 6 feet high. In the center was a stone slab that looked like an altar, and on it was a wooden box decorated with carved symbols, circles, intertwining lines, and signs resembling ancient runes. The metal inserts at the corners of the casket were the source of the glow. When I opened the box, the first thing I smelled was the odor, Hawkins continues. His face pales at the memory. Sweetish, but with putrid notes, not body rot, more like old dried flowers and something else I can't describe. Inside the box were 2 neatly tied locks of blonde hair, each wrapped with red string, and 5 baby pictures. On the back of each photo were the same strange symbols as those on the box, scrawled in a dark brown substance. I didn't immediately realize they were pictures of the missing twins, Hawkins admits, lowering his eyes. But when I realized, I felt uneasy, like I'd accidentally touched something forbidden. I'm not a religious person, but in that moment, I felt a presence, like someone was watching me from the darkness. Hawkins carefully bagged the find and immediately contacted Sheriff Mackenzie. 2 hours after the discovery, the box was already at the sheriff's office, and the cave was cordoned off as a potential crime scene. A forensics team thoroughly examined the chamber and adjacent tunnels, but found no other evidence. Forensic testing at the FBI lab confirmed the hair belonged to Emily and Elizabeth Clark. The DNA test left no doubt. The dark brown substance in the photos turned out to be animal blood mixed with plant ingredients, including mandrake root and belladonna, plants traditionally associated with witchcraft practices. But the most disturbing discovery concerned the photographs themselves. The images of the twins were taken from different angles, outside the school, outside the church, in the backyard of their home, and on the streets of Pine Hollow. In all of the photos, the girls were captured in their daily activities, unaware they were being watched. They were taken at different times, Mackenzie explains, as she spreads out copies on her office desk. The fluorescent lamp overhead flickers, creating ominous shadows. Some 2 years before they disappeared, others a few months. And the last one, judging by the girls' clothes and the lighting, was taken on the day of the disappearance, shortly before they went missing. Someone had been following them for a long time. Expert photographers determined that the images were taken with a telephoto lens from a distance of 50 to 100 yards. The quality of the images was quite high, indicating professional equipment. But the most disturbing aspect was the final shot. The twins on the shore of Lost Lake, sitting on their bicycles and looking out over the water. The point from which the photo was taken was in the woods, a place that is difficult to reach without noise. Nevertheless, the girls looked relaxed, unsuspecting of danger. To decipher the symbols, the FBI sent cryptographer Diane Forrest, an expert in cult symbolism and ancient languages, to Pine Hollow. a 40-year-old woman with short red hair and a piercing look in her blue eyes. She quickly determined that the symbols were not random or simple drawings. It's a sequential system, she explains, showing her transcripts on a computer in a makeshift office set up in the Pine Hollow police station building. On the walls are enlarged photographs of symbols connected by red threads, like in movies about serial killers. A mixture of alchemical signs, ancient runes, and unique symbols unique to this region. They form a sort of ritual text related to the concept of crossing between worlds. Forrest spent 3 days studying the symbols, comparing them to known occult systems and local artifacts from museums. The results were disturbing. The symbols belonged to a forgotten cult that existed in the Ozark Mountains in the 19th century. The cult worshipped entities that its followers believed inhabited the region's forests and lakes. I found references to a group that called themselves the Guardians of the Threshold, Forrest says, leafing through vintage newspaper clippings. They believed in the existence of parallel worlds and that certain places in these mountains were crossing points. They attached special importance to the twins, believing them to be as bridges between worlds. A breakthrough in the investigation came when Sheriff Mackenzie remembered William Decker's strange behavior after the twins disappeared. An English teacher at the local school, he had taught the Clark sisters 5th grade and was considered one of their favorite teachers. After their disappearance, he quit the school and became a recluse in a house on the edge of the woods. After obtaining a search warrant, Mackenzie and 2 officers arrived at the Decker home, a dilapidated 2-story Victorian building surrounded by tall pine trees. Inside, they found a veritable museum of the occult, hundreds of books on mysticism, local folklore, and the history of secret societies. The walls of the study were covered with maps of the region with marked dots, many of which coincided with the places where children had disappeared over the past 200 years. In his notebooks were sketches of the same symbols found in the photographs in the box. "I've studied the history of these places," Decker insisted under questioning. The 62-year-old man with aristocratic facial features and gray hair gathered in a ponytail spoke calmly, but his eyes glittered feverishly, betraying an inner agitation. Symbols are part of an ancient language that, according to legend, could be used to communicate with the forces that dwell in the forest. I was looking for a way to understand what happened to the girls. Decker has denied any involvement in the twins' disappearance, claiming his research began after they went missing. But an in-depth background check conducted by FBI agents revealed shocking facts. William Decker was not who he claimed to be. He was not born in Pine Hollow, as he claimed when he was hired, but in the town of Riverton in a neighboring county. Moved to Pine Hollow 2 years before the twins disappeared. His real name was Akers, not Decker. And most disturbing of all, he turned out to be the grandson of the Akers twins who disappeared in Riverton in 1973, whose bodies were never found. When we started digging deeper, a frightening pattern emerged, Forrest says, laying out a timeline on the table made up of newspaper clippings, police reports, and local chronicles. Every 25 years since 1848, pairs of twins have disappeared in this region, always in the last days of June, always near bodies of water, always without a trace. Forrest points to the dates circled in red: 1848, 1873, 1898, 1923, 1948, 1973, 1998. 7 pairs of twins in 150 years. 14 children who disappeared without a trace. In the archives of Pine Hollow Forest, found references to a cult called the Threshold Keepers, active openly in the mid-19th century and going underground after the Civil War. Photographs of the town's founders showed the same people at the cult's meetings. The symbols found on the casket were carved into the foundation stones of the town hall and church, disguised as common decorative elements. The local legend of the children who were taken by the forest suddenly no longer seemed just a scary tale. Following clues from Decker's books and deciphered symbols, a team of explorers discovered a network of caves deep in the Ozark Mountains. June 15th of 2006 was the day Sheriff Mackenzie, Diane Forrest, and a team of FBI specialists descended into the underground labyrinth, where they discovered evidence of a cult that had been practicing rituals with missing children for a century and a half. The entrance to the cave system was hidden in a narrow gorge overgrown with shrubs and young trees. Without the exact coordinates extracted from Decker's notes, finding it would have been impossible. The narrow manhole, barely large enough for one man to pass through, widened sharply after 15 feet, revealing a network of tunnels going off in different directions. The walls were damp, covered with a thin film of condensation, the air musty and cold. The temperature didn't exceed 50 degrees Fahrenheit, even in the heat of summer. On the walls were the same signs as the twins' photographs, carved into the stone decades, if not centuries ago. Circles, intersecting lines, strange rune-like symbols arranged in a specific sequence. Some were carved crudely, others with astonishing precision. Many were illuminated with remnants of red and black pigments. "I've never seen anything like it," admits geologist Alan Peters, who analyzed the caves. A large man with a tanned, weathered face, he turned visibly pale as he examined photographs of the cave symbols in his office. These tunnels are not entirely natural. They've been widened, reinforced. Dating shows that major work was done between 1830s and 1860s. Someone has created a real underground temple here. The tunnel system, continuing hundreds of feet underground, was designed with amazing engineering precision. Supporting columns of worked stone, drainage channels to divert water, ventilation shafts hidden in rock crevices on the surface. Evidence of elaborate, long-term work requiring considerable resources and many laborers. The main tunnel, marked by particularly large symbols, led into the central cavern, a circular hall about 30 feet in diameter, with a domed ceiling 20 feet high. In the center of the cave was a stone altar, around which were concentric circles of symbols carved deep into the stone of the floor. In the center of the altar was a depression in the shape of 2 joined circles, just the right size for 2 children's heads lying side by side. Forensic analysis showed traces of blood in the recesses of the altar, says FBI agent Michael Clark, who led the forensic team. His voice sounds dry and professional, but his eyes betray deep concern. Most of it is of animal origin, but traces of human blood of varying degrees of age have also been found. The oldest samples date back to the mid-19th century. The most recent are about 8 years old. On the walls of the central cave were carved images of trees with human faces in their trunks, star maps and figures holding hands in pairs. Around the perimeter of the hall were niches containing stone bowls filled with the remains of wax, small animal bones, and charred plants. In one of the niches, they found a cache of documents protected from moisture by waxed cloth and leather covers. The documents found in the cave, as well as in the town archives and the personal collection of Martin Wells, a local historian, allowed to reconstruct the history of the Guardians of the Threshold sect, which existed in this area from 1830s to 1920s. Wells, a 72-year-old man with the appearance of a university professor, was suddenly a key figure in the investigation. "I've been collecting information on the Guardians for over 30 years, he explains, sitting in his office, littered with bookcases and archive boxes. "My great-grandfather was a member of the sect, but left in 1887 when he realized the true nature of their rituals. He left diaries that have been passed down in our family. The sect was officially disbanded in 1923 after a series of scandals involving the disappearance of children. Local authorities conducted an investigation that did not lead to the discovery of the missing, but revealed the cult's connection to several suspicious deaths. However, new evidence has shown that the organization did not disappear, but went underground, continuing its practices in secret. They believed that certain places in the forest were portals between worlds," Wells explains, showing ancient texts with illustrations depicting trees with doors in their trunks, people half submerged in the ground, and strange beings watching from beyond the forest. The yellowed pages are covered in the same strange alphabet found in the twins' photographs. And that twins, especially children, have the unique ability to serve as guides or keys to these portals. In their beliefs, twins were born with one soul for two, creating a hole in the fabric of reality. According to the sect's teachings, every 25 years, when certain stars lined up in a particular order, the gates between worlds became thinner. A ritual using twins allowed these gates to be opened, but required a sacrifice, either physical or spiritual. Early cult texts spoke of blood sacrifices, but later practices changed to more elaborate ceremonies that included trance, psychoactive substances, and psychological influence. They believed they were sending the twins to the other world, not as victims, but as ambassadors, Wells continues, his voice growing quieter. That the children would return, changed by the experience of traveling between worlds, and bring with them knowledge and power from there. The most shocking discovery was the connection between the Guardians of the Threshold and the founders of Pine Hollow. Documents discovered in the town archives revealed that the 7 families who built the town in 1830 were members of the sect, arriving from New England after conflict with other religious groups. Some of their descendants still held powerful positions in local government: judges, police chiefs, owners of major businesses. The town wasn't founded by accident, Forrest says, pointing to an antique map spread out on the table of the investigation's temporary headquarters. Red markers show the locations where children have disappeared over the past century and a half, creating a pattern around a central point. It was built around a place the sect called the Tree of Worlds, the point where the boundary between dimensions was thinnest. And what's interesting is that this spot is right underneath Lost Lake. Geologic studies have shown that the lake did not always exist at this location. It was formed by the artificial damming of a stream in the mid-19th century, which flooded a valley where, according to the sect's records, there was an ancient tree of unusual shape, considered the center of their cult. They flooded the tree intentionally, Forrest asserted. According to their beliefs, the water strengthened the connection between worlds, making the membrane more permeable. As the investigation began to involve the town's influential families, investigators encountered growing resistance. Local Judge Harold Rayner, a descendant of one of the founders, blocked further search warrants on the property of families associated with the cult. The mayor of Pine Hollow issued a public statement condemning the witch hunt and the denigration of the town's history. Opposition took increasingly sinister forms. Unknown assailants broke into the sheriff's office and destroyed some of the evidence, including the originals of several documents from the cave. The hard drive containing forensic data was wiped. Diane Forrest twice found dead birds in her car encased in the same ritual symbols that were in photos of the twins. "They don't want the truth to come out," Mackenzie says, sitting in her office late at night. A thunderstorm rumbles outside the window, periodic flashes of lightning illuminating his gaunt face, whose eyes now reflect not only determination, but fear of what they might discover. He pores over the photos of the altar, the twins, the symbols on the walls of the cave, as if trying to put together a puzzle that is missing key pieces. The question is, what exactly are they hiding? A series of kidnappings and murders stretching back generations, or something more unimaginable? On the wall of the sheriff's office is a map with the dates of the disappearances marked 1848, 1873, 1898, 1923, 1948, 1973, 1998. Every 25 years, always twins, always without a trace, always in the last days of June, when certain stars line up over the Ozark Mountains, forming a configuration the cult called the key to the gate. It acquired a sinister historical context, rooted in the past of these places deeper than anyone could have imagined. And at the center of the story was an English teacher whose true connection to the Clark twins was just beginning to reveal itself. The discovery of the diary of Martha Howell, a resident of Pine Hollow, who died in the year 2004, was a decisive moment in the investigation. Discovered in a boarded-up closet of an old house, the entries turned the investigators' perception of the fate of the missing twins upside down. The diary revealed a shocking truth. Missing children sometimes return, but they return altered by something beyond human comprehension. The diary was a tattered leather-bound notebook hidden in a tin cookie box under the floorboards. The pages were yellowed by time, the ink faded in places, but the content remained frighteningly clear. The entries were made by the trembling hand of an elderly woman who, judging by the dates on the last pages, was afraid to take her secret to the grave. In the year 1948, when I was 8 years old, I saw things I should not have seen, she wrote in handwriting that became more and more illegible with each word, as if the very act of recording these memories caused physical pain. The children who came out of the tree by the lake, the 2 girls who disappeared 25 years ago. They were the same, but not the same. Their eyes were like an endless void, and they spoke in voices that sounded like the rustling of 1,000 leaves. They smiled, but not like humans. Further pages, examined by FBI experts and local investigators, chronicled little Martha's observations of the returning Carter twins. The children, who had disappeared in the year 1923, suddenly returned and were welcomed into the family of local pastor James Brown, who declared them distant relatives. They never ate, never slept, but pretended to do so, Martha noted in pages mottled with exclamation points and underlines. I watched them sit motionless all night, just staring out the window. Their skin was too cold when we played salsa. and they always knew what I was thinking before I could say anything. The diary described how the twins would sometimes disappear for hours, going into the woods without their foster parents' knowledge and returning with gifts, strange crystals with an inner glow, and plants no one had ever seen in the area. They told the children stories of a world beyond the trees, where time flows differently, where trees sing, and human-like creatures live in crystal palaces. The most disturbing revelation came in records dating back to the summer of 1949. A year after the return of the twins, 4 children from the town disappeared, including Martha's younger brother, 6-year-old Tommy. He was last seen playing at the edge of the woods with the Carter twins. The children's bodies were never found. "I know they took them," Martha wrote. The letters blurred as tears dripped onto the page. "I saw them take them to the big oak tree by the lake, but no one believed me. Mom said I was making it up out of grief, and the twins smiled their wrong smiles at me and told me that soon I would be able to see miracles too." A study of the archives revealed that after the children disappeared in 1949, the Carter twins also vanished from town, supposedly leaving with their foster parents for another state. But no record of the Brown family's move survived, nor was there any evidence of their arrival in any other locality. Martha's diary remained hidden for more than 50 years, and only a chance discovery during the demolition of an old house brought its long-forgotten revelations back into the light of day. FBI agents immediately linked this information to William Decker's biography. Genetic tests conducted by the FBI laboratory revealed a result that under normal circumstances would have been recognized as a laboratory error. William Decker was indeed the grandson of twins who had disappeared in the year 1923. A fact biologically impossible unless they had returned after the disappearance and given birth to a child who became his parent. "DNA doesn't lie," says Dr. Sarah Kim, the geneticist who conducted the analysis. "We double-checked the results 3 times. Decker has a direct genetic relationship to the Akers twins. It contradicts the whole official story of their disappearance, but the facts are undeniable." Decker's final interrogation took place in a small room at the Pine Hollow police station. Bare concrete walls, 1 desk, 3 chairs, a video camera in the corner. The dim light of the single lamp cast harsh shadows on Decker's face, emphasizing his sunken eyes and the wrinkles that seemed to cut into his skin. The interrogation lasted 7 hours. Decker denied everything, refused to cooperate, demanded a lawyer. But at the end, exhausted by the hours of pressure, he finally spoke. His videotaped confession became the strangest document in Arkansas forensic history. "They're coming back, but not the way they left," he said, staring at the wall with an unseeing gaze. His voice sounded monotonous, like he was repeating a memorized text. "My grandmothers came back to continue the line. They told me of a place beyond the trees where time flows differently, where you can live a whole life while only a moment passes here. They came back to prepare the way for others." When asked if Emily and Elizabeth Clark were alive, he answered with a smile that sent a chill down the spine of seasoned investigators. A smile that didn't involve his eyes, stretching his lips too wide, too unnaturally. "They'll be back in 17 years when the stars line up again. They will bring with them those who have been waiting beyond the threshold for centuries. The city was built as a gateway, and the gateway will finally open fully." A psychiatric evaluation showed no signs of psychosis or other disorders that could explain such statements. Decker was found to be sane and conscious of his actions, but his testimony was so fantastic that the state's attorney refused to use it as evidence. The full meaning of his words remains unclear. Neither is the fate of Emily and Elizabeth Clark, about whom there is no reliable information. No bodies, no trace, just a casket in a cave and a web of strange coincidences spanning a century and a half. However, research into the archives by Diane Forrest's team has revealed that many of the missing twins did indeed return years later. Entries in church books, old newspapers, and residents' diaries confirmed the strange pattern. Missing children sometimes reappeared, introduced as distant relatives of local families, but their reappearance always preceded new disappearances. The Pine Hollow Town Archives, partially destroyed by fire in 1967, contained fragmentary accounts of similar cases in 1873 and 1898. Each time after the return of the missing twins, strange events occurred in the town. Unexplained illnesses, crops of previously unknown plants, mass dreams seen by all the inhabitants at the same time. Linda Clark still keeps her daughter's room untouched, with children's books on the shelves and plush toys on the beds. The beds are made with fresh blankets and the tables are dust-free, as if the owner waits for the children to return every day. In the corner is a shelf of photo albums that capture every day of the twins' lives before they disappeared. "I feel like they're alive," she says, sitting in a chair between two empty beds. Her gaze is fixed somewhere far away, through the wall, as if she's seeing something beyond the reach of ordinary sight. "Sometimes I think I hear their voices in the rustling of the leaves outside the window. They call to me. Maybe one day I'll have the courage to go to their call." Psychologists observing Linda say it's a typical reaction of a mother unable to come to terms with the loss of her children. But the latest entries in her personal diary, which she has agreed to show investigators, contain disturbing details. Linda claims that on several occasions she has seen her daughters standing at the edge of the woods, watching her home. That they smile at her, smiles that are not right. That their eyes are a different color now. Sheriff Mackenzie continues to investigate despite mounting pressure from local authorities. His office is littered with documents, photographs, witness statements. The walls are covered with charts, maps, timelines. He spends every spare minute analyzing the data, trying to find a rational explanation for what is happening. "I don't know what to believe," he admits, looking at a map with marked locations of disappearances over the last 200 years. The red dots form a strange pattern around Lost Lake, like blood spatter around a central wound. "But I know something happens in these woods every 25 years, and the next cycle will come in 17 years. I'll be ready." As the investigation continues, the residents of Pine Hollow live with a mystery deeper than anyone could have imagined. Some fear the truth, others pray for it. The city council voted to end official support for the investigation. The FBI withdrew most of its agents, leaving only Diane Forrest with minimal resources. The local media has lost interest in a story that seems too fantastic, and the forest around the town holds its secrets, rustling its leaves like so many whispering voices. And sometimes, if you listen on particularly quiet nights, you can hear children's laughter coming from the direction of Lost Lake, even though no one has bathed there after sundown for years.